Hi. For a leadership course at Fort Hays State University, where I'm doing my master's, AEP 855 it's called, we were asked to look at two sources and kind of link them up with one of the texts that we've been reading. Ultimately, the two sources we were to find needed to address inclusion in leadership. How do leaders deal with different races, economical statuses, things of this nature, gender, for example? Being an ESL teacher, I was pretty excited about this because these are the people that I deal with all the time. I live here in South Korea, and I'm constantly having to think about my students and what's going on in their brain, although I can admit that I don't do the greatest job of it all the time. So this is an area I need to improve in, and that's where a lot of the excitement came from. In our class, the primary text, the leadership challenge, as you can see up in the corner, was pretty influential over me. It's a good book, and I definitely recommend you reading it. It has had a long history. It's been out for about 25 years, and the authors have put out several different editions. So this is not just, this is a labor of love. This is a quarter of somebody's life that they put into this, and you can tell the stories that they put in the book, as well as the ideas, are somewhat simple at times, but they worked that hard to make it simple. So it's definitely worth a read. In the Leadership Challenge, the authors outline 5 principles of leadership. They talk about modeling a way, inspiring a shared vision, challenging the process, enabling others to act, and encouraging the heart. These are the things that make a good leader outstanding. And so the goal today is to link up these 5 principles with some new sources that are going to be geared towards being inclusive, and also talk about ESOL a little bit. So we've got quite a blender of things going on here. Hopefully I can do it. My mind is a blender already, so I hope that I make this as smooth as possible. But please feel free to comment below if you don't understand something or you'd like further explanation. In my research, I stumbled across an awesome article on system leadership. And at the time, I didn't even know what system leadership was. I was like, what does that mean? Although the name should pretty much imply it. At the beginning of the article, there was an example of Nelson Mandela, which, I mean, the man is a legend and totally fits what we're trying to talk about here. Inclusive leadership, thinking about different races, cultures, genders. The guy did it hands down. So after I read he was, the example in the article, I went ahead and committed myself to this rather lengthy article. And I was not let down. It was a wealth of information. So I want to share this first source with you. Systems leadership looks at things from the larger perspective. Most of the time, when people look at a problem, a very complex problem, they tend to take their point of view because that's the only thing they know. And when they're arguing with each other, really they're arguing about their own point of view rather than looking at things from the top and seeing, okay, my point of view is this, your point of view is this, we fit into this system like this. Let's talk about this together. So system leadership kind of takes the approach of looking at things from the top and seeing how each person fits into the big puzzle. If we imagine, race, gender, and other complex situations tossed into these very crazy scenarios, the problems get so complex that it's no wonder people are arguing all the time about their point of view. There's just too many variables going on. However, if you can take on a systems leadership approach, then things become a little bit better. Things become a little bit easier because you have this kind of friendship or relationship developing where I see your side, you see my side, where there's a little give and take going on. I don't know about you, but as an ESL teacher, I can totally relate to this. As a human, I can relate. I mean, it's very tough to see things through the eyes of our students. Behavioral disruptions, these extremely shy students that sometimes come into my class, which ESL I think is probably known for. There are some shy students in there. It's really frustrating for me to understand their side of it. And I think sometimes I need to step back and look at the bigger picture and look how we're all fitting in and think about, their background and where they're coming from a little bit more. It's hard to do in the moment, but it's a definite necessary step to bridging the gap and getting the most out of everybody in the situation. Systems leadership encourages us to try on other people's shoes and see things from their point of view. And that's why we can let go of some of our pet peeves and the situation becomes a little bit more bearable. So that's one plus that I'm really seeing for this in ESOL or ESL. So the article kind of goes on to talk about how leaders deal with these complex issues by fostering a very deep collaboration and what it takes to get to that deep collaboration, that level of collaboration where everybody is truly seeing things from the other person's perspective and everybody's taking in the whole system. This process can take, years. It could take years. This is not an easy thing to do. And so the article really went to great lengths in kind of simplifying that, but then also giving a lot of ideas on how to make this collaboration a successful venture. Perhaps the biggest step that you can take, and this is hit on by Posner and Kouzes as well, you're a part of the system. It all starts with you, like you have to make the first leap, the first step, and then others might follow. But without your step, nobody's going to follow. So it all begins with you. And this was one thing that the article hit on right from the get-go. And they gave some lovely narratives about different people who went through some of these processes, just like I find many of the leadership texts do. And that's what makes the leadership reading so interesting, I think. So definitely take a chance to read this article. The next step that it kind of alluded to was creating models or kind of like diagrams showing this complex relationship from a top perspective. That's one very important step in being a systems leader. And I can see this crossing over to ESOL as well, kind of taking a look at the processes that go on in your school, how kids go home and study, the little things, like when the bus leaves, this bus driver's situation. Those things can make a big difference. If you talk to one student or two on an individual level, suddenly these little things pop up and you're like, oh, that's all it is? That's what's stopping you from being a great student? But looking at things from a systems point of view like this might uncover some of these little issues that are coming up and could possibly make the difference between some people accepting what's going on and not accepting it. So I definitely was very interested in this part of the article, how people are making these maps. In fact, I'd like to search out and look for some examples of this mapping just to kind of put a picture to what was being said in words. The mapping was definitely important, but some other things that really helped to kind of foster this deep collaboration were things like peer shadowing and a technique called Peacekeeping Circles, which was adapted from Native Americans. In one narrative that the article shared, inner city kids were able to use these peacekeeping circles and get down to bare essentials, get down to their main problems. Basically, they were able to create friendships. And isn't that really what we're looking for here? As teachers, as leaders. I mean, people say don't mix business and pleasure, or, keep business separate from friendship, but is that the safest route? I don't think so. And I think a lot of this article pointed towards the golden rules that we hear people say over and over again. And a lot of leadership is about, I think, maintaining those golden rules. The golden rules seem to be iterated throughout this article, throughout systems leadership, with the primary one being, hey, let's try to see from the other person's point of view. For our main text from Kouzes and Posner, this rings true throughout all of their principles. You really need to see things from the other person's point of view in order to inspire a movement and get people motivated. So it feels like that is ingrained in almost all of these 5 things that they kind of encourage. After reading that incredible article, I started looking through the comments, and I was able to find my second source pretty easily, actually. There was a big response to this, and I found a site called systemchangers.com, which was pretty interesting. It basically was an interview project surrounding this system leadership, and it went into more, basically the same ideas, but in a different way, which really solidified it in my mind. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this source because, like I said, it kind of reiterated what was already said, but having the 2 sources merged together was really helpful for me to kind of clarify the whole idea. I will touch on a few things, though. Again, their focus on part of it was getting people to collaborate and the difficulties in this. They really stress that this is not an easy task to do. Getting people on that level where they can see that, each person's side, it's not an easy task. One thing that I loved about what they said, and like I said, in leadership texts, you see it all the time, is they also talked about narratives and how important it is in systems leadership to have a narrative so that you're describing what's going on and everybody can see what's happening. One other suggestion they had was to focus on learning and hold your theories or your final goals very lightly, because if you do this, if you try to emphasize your final goals, then really you're creating kind of a us against them mindset, and you don't want to do that. They talked about a liminal space, they called it, where you could move in and out of a system. Therefore, you could observe what was going on, but also jump back and kind of look at it as you're changing it and being the leader that helps people meet and collaborate, and how important it was to be able to jump in and out and be on the side of the people in the system, but then also jump out and be that leader and push it in different directions. I thought that was very, very interesting. A final interesting point that I found in the second source was about this idea of interdependencies and how important they are, whereas hierarchies are kind of not as important, and that's interesting. They brought up an example that actually the first source talked about with Nike, where the whole shoe industry united and changed kind of their policies on bad chemicals in the shoes or bad ingredients that they were using in their production processes. The whole industry changed this, and this is pretty phenomenal when you think about it. I thought that was really interesting, and it kind of drove home the point of looking at things from the top and seeing the connectedness. And if you can do that, amazing things can happen. So there was a lot more in this second source, and I encourage you to look at the site because it really is an amazing site. Some of the videos didn't pop up right, and I'll put the link in the description here so you can just go to the YouTube page. But for some reason, the tool they were using to pop in the videos, it didn't work. No big deal. But it is a cool interview project and definitely worth a look. In conclusion, I'd like to just touch on something that I've been doing recently with my teaching, and it's a project-based class that I work on with older middle school kids, the oldest people that I work with anyway. And what I noticed is that, if you want to inspire a shared vision or model the way, that's great. But in this class, this project-based class, I noticed that, oftentimes kids will do it for themselves. Our job sometimes is just to facilitate and give them a direction and let them go. Why do we need to always be up and chanting and, saying, and it's kind of funny because, I like to speak a lot and this video is long, but, it's a good point. Like, just let people do it for themselves. And I think that's one of the challenges with ESOL and teaching in general. And the systems leadership really kind of drove that home a little bit. Here's a philosophy that's saying, okay, take a look at the system, but your job is not to really be up there being a leader, pounding your chest and getting everybody's attention. Your job is to get people in the right areas so that they can talk to each other. You're a facilitator. You're not a king or this great hierarchy kind of figure. So I thought that was very interesting, and I hope that by watching this video you were also able to take something away from it, and I hope it interested you to go check out these links. Definitely do so. Thanks for watching. Comment, like, subscribe. Let's get a conversation going about system leadership. Thanks. Bye.